thanks for tuning in to Grizzly Rizzly 5.5 Day 2. Kind of a review of yesterday, solving absolute value equations with one little twist. So let's do a recap on how to solve absolute value equations. First step is always isolate. You need to have the absolute value piece isolated on one side. And then step 2 is to set up your two equations and solve. So set up your two equations. Well, we'll stop there. Set up your two equations. And remember, one of them is going to be equal to the positive version of the number on the right, and one of them is going to be equal to the negative version of the number on the right. And then step 3 is solve. Just solve. Okay, now today's only new thing is step 4, and it's a little trick after step 1. Sometimes when you guys end up isolating and it already equals a negative number, the answer is always no solution, and you can stop right there. And I'll show you why when we start doing some problems. Okay, so let's do a little review here. Example 1 is let's solve the absolute value. So we're going to isolate first. So in order to isolate, we're going to add 5. We get 3, absolute value of 2x minus 7 equals 9. And then divide by 3, because you cannot distribute. And we get absolute value of 2x minus 7 equals 3, because these cancel. Is everyone good so far? Okay. And then we set up our two equations. And we're definitely going to run out of room here. The first one's going to be 2x minus 7 equals positive 3. And the second one's going to be 2x minus 7 equals negative 3. And you guys know what to do. Go ahead and solve. So add 7, divide by 2, we get x equals 5. Add 7, divide by 2, we get x equals 2. And these are your two solutions. Okay, so that's this one. Okay, but let's see what I'm talking about for that weird step 4. What does it look like if there's no solution? So same thing, we're going to isolate first. So if you're trying to isolate the absolute value, same thing as before, we're going to add 5, and we get negative 3, absolute value of 2x minus 7 equals 9, and then no distributing. So divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. And these cancel. We get 2x minus 7 equals negative 3. Now here is the problem. Here's where you get to stop. These are absolute value. If you ever end up with an absolute value equaling a negative number, you stop. You stop right here and you say no solution. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. Okay, do you guys see the difference? When we isolated here, it was equal to a positive number, so we were able to move on. But when we isolated here and it was set equal to a negative number, that's when you stop and say no solution. And the reason why, remember yesterday we said the absolute value of anything is always positive. So there's no way that an absolute value can equal a negative number, so it's no solution. Okay, so that's what we're going to practice today. So I would say if you guys want to stop now, you can. If you'd like to see some more examples, then go ahead and turn the page. But this could be a stopping point if you understand that idea. Okay, but I'm going to do a couple more here. So number 1, always isolate first. So if we want to isolate the absolute value, we need to draw the wall, and minus 6. All right, so minus 6 from both sides. You get absolute value 3x plus 5 equals negative 8. Okay, and here's where you need to stop and think. If you're isolated and your absolute value is equal to a negative number, you stop and you say, there's no way, no solution. Absolute value will always give you a positive answer. So if it's equal to a negative number, no solution. Okay, so those are kind of nice. You get to stop soon. All right, let's try one more like that. Number 2. Isolate first. So if you are attempting to isolate, we're going to draw our wall, and then minus 4, minus 4. We get 2 absolute value of n minus 5 equals negative 2. And then you can't distribute, so to isolate further, we divide by 2, divide by 2. And these cancel. We get absolute value of m minus 5 equals negative 1. Okay, again, you stop here and say, okay, I've isolated and my absolute value is equal to a negative. That's never going to happen. So you stop and you say no solution. Okay, that's the new thing for today. And then let's try, I think the next 2 are ones where you are going to be able to solve it. So we can try 1 or 2 of these. Same thing, always isolate first. So draw your wall, and if you're going to isolate, you're going to add 7. Add 7, add 7. We get negative 3, absolute value of m plus 2 equals, what is that, negative 3. And that might be an n, whatever. It might be an n. I'm just going to call it m. And then to finish isolating, we need to divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, and let's see what we get isolated. Absolute value of m plus 2 equals positive 1. Oh, you thought you were going to get to say no solution, but actually this one's equal to a positive number. So when you get a positive number, it is possible to solve, and this is when you set up your 2 equations. And one of them is going to be m plus 2 equals positive 1, and the other one's going to be m plus 2 equals negative 1. And then you're going to go ahead and solve. So draw your wall, solve. Draw your wall, minus 2, minus 2. You get m equals negative 1. And minus 2, minus 2. You get m equals negative 3. And those are your 2 answers. Okay, so recap of today, when you isolate the absolute value, if you're equal to a negative number after isolation, you stop and say no solution. Because absolute value makes everything positive. This cannot happen. If you've isolated and you end up with a positive number, then you can do it by setting up your 2 equations. All right, thank you for watching.